This is a Vision for a Global Village, 25th September 2025. Welcome again to all subscribers and viewers. We are very excited to interview this evening one of the luminaries in Western Muslim political philosophy. I'd like to introduce Dr. Muqtedar Khan. He is a professor in the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Delaware. His curriculum vitae is very prestigious. He was a former Brookings Institution fellow, former fellow at the New Lines Institute, the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, and he's written a few very good books that have warmed our hearts. And in addition, one of our other co-hosts, Ruby Amatulla, as you know, a writer and author based out of Dhaka, Bangladesh, former CEO of Women in Good Governance, who has been working for years to engage American Muslims in becoming more politically empowered. I anticipate a robust discussion. My name is Dr. Matthew Capiello, out in California. And as a starter question,
well, you have forgotten to say that in the tradition of Avicenna, you are also a medical doctor and a philosopher.
Well, he was a polymath. I think nowadays it would be jack of all trades, but I'm excited to have this discussion, and these subjects are also very close to global health policy and public health. So to begin, I wish I could start on a more positive note in America, but it's kind of a challenging time. Washington, D.C.'s policies have been pretty corrosive in the last few decades, not just in Palestine, which is on all of our minds, but throughout the years, throughout Muslim-majority countries, in Iraq and Afghanistan, throughout much of West and Central Africa with AFRICOM. And we've seen many, propped up or puppet regimes that have disenfranchised and dispossessed a lot of the world's poor. Yet, despite all of this, a lot of Muslims around the world still look up to the United States as, with some degree of hope and wonder, despite all problems. And many people still think the U.S. can be a foreign policy leader in the world. And the U.S. had a rich history in global governance in the early 20th century with people like Woodrow Wilson, Franklin D. Roosevelt. That was perhaps one of the contributing forces that leads us to hold on to some of our past glory. But to start out, just for the room, have American Muslims still kept hope in America? Have American Muslims become too cynical about America? How do people think American Muslims view the U.S. nowadays?
Thank you very much for having me, Sister Ruby Amatulla and Matthew. I'm honored to be your guest, and the topics that you have suggested are quite intriguing. Your first question.
Excuse me, brother.
Yes.
Could you raise the sound a little bit or speak a little louder?
Okay, this is the loudest I can do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and after you record it, when you edit it, you can raise the voice in the recording, or I can do that for you. So, as I was saying, that there are many questions you have bundled in the first question, which also is a critique of American foreign policy. So my instant reaction is that if you think that the objective of American foreign policy is to take care of Muslim countries and take care of Muslims and rescue Muslims from trouble, then it has been an utter failure, no doubt about it. However, if the purpose and goals of American foreign policy is to maintain American primacy in the world, to shape the world in such a way that it advances US national interests, ensures that America remains the most powerful country in the world, as well as remains the richest country in the world, then America has done a pretty good job. So from 1945 onwards until now, you can see that America has been the primary power in the world, to such an extent that Donald Trump is getting away with everything and whatever he wishes. And this talk that we live in a multipolar world sounds quite shallow because there is nobody who can check Donald Trump. And America seems to have so much power and wealth at its disposal that even if we were to make several mistakes, we might still recover from the damage he might do to the United States. So first thing that I would like to say is that America has done a pretty okay job. It has won the Cold War, won the war on terror, it's maintained a unipolar situation. Even today, the United States has 26% of the global GDP, and militarily, no one is near us, even though the last country that America lost to was a Muslim country, the poorest in the world, Afghanistan. But nevertheless, in terms of country to country, there's nobody more powerful. So are we to be depressed and upset by American foreign policy? Yes, if you are an idealist, and you don't have to be a Muslim to be an idealist. For those of us who see that, who imagine that America can be a force for good in the world, then they would be disappointed. So right now there's a genocide taking place in Gaza. Rather than ending it, the United States is essentially perpetuating it, supporting it, funding it, arming it. And other than the Israel, the only other principal country responsible for what is happening in Gaza is the United States. Yes, what Hamas did on October 7 was despicable. What has happened since then is catastrophic, and we are guilty of that. The United States, I also think, following Professor John Mearsheimer of the University of Chicago, that we were instrumental in triggering the war between Russia and Ukraine. So if you look at the two wars that are ongoing, rather than bringing peace and ending those, we seem to be fueling them with our weapons and our support and our one-sided approach to those two conflicts. Beyond that, the bigger challenge is the rise of China, its alternative model to the world. And we are not yet ready. We don't know what is ultimately going to come out of this contest that we are right now engaged in as Americans with China. And yesterday, or not yesterday, day before yesterday, you saw Donald Trump meet with Muslim countries at the UN. He met with 8 Muslim countries. I think there were 6 heads of states. MBS from Saudi Arabia was not there, and General Sisi, the president of Egypt, was not there, but the Qatari Amir was there, the King of Jordan was there, President Erdogan was there, and you could see that Muslim countries are still looking up to the United States to solve their problems. And they trust the United States more for their personal, for the national security, even today. Erdogan met Donald Trump today, and he was talking about buying F-16s and F-35s from the US. And then the Pakistani Prime Minister and General Asim Munir also met with Trump today. So you can see that there are many countries which are more aligned with the US than they are with each other in the Muslim world. So the United States pursues its interests, and the United States also pursues the interests of those communities inside America, those lobbies and institutions and groups inside America who are more powerful, more engaged, and more willing to spend money. Look at the way we spend money. The owner of Oracle used his billions to buy TikTok to end the only social media where the Palestinian point of view was available. But what did Muslims do with their money? They bought a plane, they gave a plane to Donald Trump. Even if they have money, they don't have vision. So we are being punished for our foolishness in spite of having resources.
My personal experience when I was, I was very active at that time after 9/11, and based on my writings and all that, 22 different Muslim organizations, including CARE, MPAC, and IIIT, Dr. Barzinski's group, and then the other groups that came together in 2007 to form AMI-PI, American Muslim Iraq Peace Initiative. And we proposed certain things that were very progressive. It had a speedy exit strategy for the American soldiers, America from Iraq, and Iraq being viable by making 3 ethnic groups interdependent and indispensable in the governance of Iraq. We suggested that. And the senators and congressmen were very interested. In fact, Biden at that time, I caught him in a camp. He was campaigning for a for presidential position, and Dubuque, Iowa. I caught him and talked to him. He saw our team in Washington, D.C., and also we saw senior leaders like Grassley, Senator Grassley from the Republican Party and other. But what happened is that I see, and what I sense, and I still sense today the same thing, some kind of inhibition or maybe underestimating ourselves, being citizens of the United States and taking a more forceful role, and ultimately facing difficulties in Iraq. At that time, violence was very bad, ethnic civil war, and we were not allowed to go. But what I suggested is that we give we publish our position in the leading newspapers and
Sister,
create a national presence. But I think that our group did not go with that. But somehow I feel a little bit frustrated. But I think that even that would create some kind of positive flow for the Muslim community.
I don't know why we are talking about Iraq now, but at that time I was writing in the New York Times, I was writing in the Washington Post. I was the president of the Association of Muslim Social Scientists. I worked very closely with Dr. Jamal Bazinji. I was on the board of CARE and both ISNA at that time, and I'm very intimately aware, but there was one fundamental problem there. American Muslims were coming across as representatives of the Muslim world and not as representatives of America. So even in that group that you said, the American government leadership were meeting with that group as if that group was speaking on behalf of Iraq and Al-Qaeda and not on behalf of America. I'm an American. So when I am in a meeting, I'm representing American interests as American Muslim. So if I were to be in a dialogue between America and Afghanistan, I'm not representing Afghanistan. I'm representing the US. And this is one of the things that immigrant Muslims have had trouble in making the transition. They seem to think that they've lived here for 40 years, they're citizens of America, but they speak. I don't want to dig up the mess, but there was some fundamental problems with that group because the certain demands that they made were something that were extremely unacceptable to the United States. And we as a group immediately after that lost some credibility after the first discussion. I was in one of those meetings when the FBI director came in and also with some people at the State Department and the Bush administration. But at that time, American Muslims were just learning. We had endorsed George W. Bush, if you remember. We had endorsed him for elections. He had said he would get rid of the Secret Evidence Act. He had announced a date for the Palestinian state, if you remember. He had said July something 2002 or something like that. But then 9/11 completely set us back. 9/11 was a disaster, and the early responses of the Muslim community denying it, trying to pin it on other communities initially by the leadership of the Muslim community was completely mishandled. At that time, fortunately, the community was small and there was more cohesion in the community. So for example, if I wanted to get anything done, there were only 4 or 5 phone calls that I had to make. I had to call Nihad at CARE, I had to call Dr. Jamal Bazinji at IIIT, and I called Syed Saeed at ISNA, and we could get lots of things done. Today, it's not like that. Today, the Muslim community is so diverse. It's unbelievable. You'll be very surprised by from where certain Muslims are going to pop up. So, for example, I mean, you're from California, Matthew. You know that the fourth Muslim member of Congress is now from California, and she's not very well.
Excited about her. Yeah.
And she's not very well known in the community. And when people talk about Muslims in the Congress, they don't even mention her. So, yeah, so I think we have moved on way far. The Muslim community is totally very, very different. And I hate to say that at that time we were in the clutches of the Jamaat Islami and the Muslim Brotherhood, which fortunately we are not at the moment. We are a sovereign community. We think independently. We are not very cohesive. We have many interests. We are a community of communities. There's an Afghan community, there's a Pakistani community, an Indian Muslim community. There's a Palestinian community, Iraqis, Iranians. So, and then if our countries of origin are at war, then it puts us all in a very strange situation. So I think it's much more interesting as a scholar to study American Muslims today than it was 25 years ago, but because they're full of surprises. And the biggest surprise, obviously, is Zohran Mamdani.
So do you think that Zohran Mamdani's proactive stand and the very visionary leadership, do you think that will inspire the rest of the Muslim community in America, especially among the younger generations?
So first of all, we have to see Zohran is not a visionary. There's nothing visionary about his agenda. Everything is already been done in the US. Every policy that he's advocating, whether it is free buses or government groceries, they have all been implemented somewhere or the other in the United States itself. Donald Trump himself gave $28 billion worth of subsidy to the farmers in his first term. So taking care of those who are marginalized poor. What Mamdani is he is authentic. Mamdani is an American. That's the beauty of him. That's why he's so different from all the other immigrant Muslims who are unable to come across as Americans. He does. And the most spectacular moment of his was in the debate when all the participants were asked, where would you go after you win? And people said, we'll go to Israel. And one guy said, we'll go to Israel and Ukraine. And he said, no, I will be here in New York.
Yes.
So that is the exact reason why he's popular, because New Yorkers sense in him authenticity. But if you stand up and say that the moment I get to the US Congress, I'm going to go and try to fix problems in Palestine, I'm going to go to Kashmir and solve the problems of Kashmir, then I'll go to Bangladesh, and then maybe 40, 50 years later, I'll come back and take care of my constituency, which is going to elect me to Congress, then you have lost the election in the first speech itself, right? So one of the problems that we had 20, 25 years ago was that we as a community were completely focused on foreign policy issues. So if you go back to the period when you were active, some of the big issues, Muslims had no position. For example, on gun, where are Muslims on gun control at the moment? This is such a big national problem. Where are Muslims on healthcare, on Medicaid problems? You know, people could die because of this big, beautiful bill as a result of that bill. They could be our neighbors. Are we worried about them? Yes, we are worried about Palestine and Gaza. We are not worried about Sudan. I don't know why, but we are worried. We are selective in our concern also, even in the Muslim world. But we have to be genuine. If you want the Americans to vote for you, you have to care about Americans. And that's what Zohran Mamdani did. And in the past few years, we have produced a lot of young American Muslims, primarily those who were born here. Zohran was not born here, which is a pity because there's a ceiling on how far he can go. I mean, he should run against Schumer soon, but that's the limit, right? He cannot become more than a senator. But there are others who are born in the US who are doing well. In 2022, about 235 American Muslims got elected. And and all across the board. So if you look at state legislatures, state senators, if you look at city councils, even if you look at judges who are elected judges, somebody like Keith Ellison, who's an elected attorney general. So if you look at all elected positions, there were 235 Muslims who were elected in 2022, and the number has gone up significantly since then. And especially we have added a new congressperson here from California. So yes, American Muslims are doing well, in spite of the fact that there is so much of Islamophobia in this country, there's so much of hatred. I mean, what Mamdani is doing in New York is stunning. I mean, he is promising to arrest Netanyahu the moment he lands in New York, and he's winning New Yorkers, and he's winning Jewish neighborhoods in New York. I mean, that is, he's performing magic in New York, and unless there's some cheating going on in some way or the other in the election process, he should win easily, hands down, inshallah. But this is something new in America. And always keep in mind that this is not just because of Zohran or just because Muslims are doing it. This is, the credit goes to Americans in general. The Americans who are voting for him, who are rooting for him, who are campaigning for him. There are like 70,000 volunteers who are trying to help Mamdani win. So yes, America is changing, and so are American Muslims. And I'm quite optimistic about the role of American Muslims in American politics.
So I have a question about Sharifat al-Medina, the charter that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has actually laid down to govern Medina, and the Constitution of the United States. Professor Aziza al-Hibri and scholars like that find amazing similarities among the fundamental. One created 11 centuries earlier in a tribal society, and he integrated a warring society and established a progressive region with his leadership and all that. Do you think that we can help our scholars like yourself can come up with an agenda that we can inspire the younger generation to be more informed about that, and influenced by the different qualities of leadership that is absolutely necessary in this troubled time? For example, compromising in strategies and taking innovative steps like the compromises in the Hudaybiyah Treaty and all that, and then, but also remaining steadfast on the principles and values, as Mamdani is demonstrating, and American public like that. But how do we promote those kinds of ideas among the younger generations, not taking granted that they all know about it? Maybe they are not. Yes, go ahead.
So the first thing I want to say is that when I read that question, I was a little upset. I wrote a whole book on that, and you are not familiar with it. This book is based on the Constitution of Medina. I completely reject the model of the Khilafah, because God didn't make the Khulafa Rashidin as role models for us. He chose Prophet Muhammad as role model for us, peace be upon him. So he governed in Medina for 10 years. So he established a republic which was based on a constitution. The Khulafa Rashidin didn't have a constitution. They just made up things as they went along. Literally, look at the way Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was elected. And then look at how Umar was elected. He was nominated, and that's it. And then Umar to Usman, you have an electoral college. And then the electoral college is gone from Usman to Ali. So they just made up as they went along. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, ruled by a constitution called the Constitution of Medina. And there are 3 or 4 remarkable things about that. One is that it was both a social contract as well as a constitution. So people signed up The Prophet was the leader of Medina, not because he was the Prophet of God, but because the people of Medina wanted him to be their leader. And it was not just Muslims, but Muslims and Jews and pagans who chose him as their leader. So that was the first remarkable aspect of it, that it was a social contract. Second, it was also serving as a constitution because it articulated the rights and duties and responsibilities of various different tribes. What is interesting is that unlike the US Constitution, which only treats individuals, the Constitution of Medina looks at groups or tribes as well as individuals. The third thing is that it was not a religious institution. In fact, I think it is Article 24 or 14, I don't remember right now. It says very clearly that Muslims and Jews are one ummah. The Constitution says Muslims and Jews are one ummah. So it recognized the equality of different religious communities in the Constitution. They had equal rights and they had equal duties, and it was seen as a multi-religious, multi-ethnic school. I remember that I had a very long conversation with President Clinton at the NYU Law School on the Constitution of Medina. It was unbelievable. He had it nearly memorized, the Constitution of Medina. I have not met a single Muslim leader who has memorized, who can tell you in this article, this is what the Constitution of Medina says, as Bill Clinton. And when I asked him, how come you're so familiar? He said, I talked to Yasser Arafat about the Constitution of Medina. So I had read it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It is absolutely fascinating.
And you know, he is gifted. He was, and Clinton was a very intelligent man. So I think even though he must have read it once or twice, he remembered it very vividly. And Imran Khan talked a lot about Riyasat-e Medina. He doesn't know what he's talking about. This book, I have at least sent 6 copies to him with the pages posted. At least read it. There were 5 pages on the Constitution of Medina so that he could speak with cohesion. But I don't know whether he read it or not.
So you're saying that you went to the West and you didn't see Islam, but you saw Muslims. You went to the Muslim world and you saw Muslims, but no Islam.
Well, we see more of Islam here than we see in the Muslim world, undoubtedly. I mean, what Dr. Capiello is saying is a very famous quote by Muhammad Abdu, who, when he went to Paris, he says, I came to Paris here and I see Islam without Muslims. And when I go back home, I see Muslims without Islam. So there are lots of little things. Like, for example, when my father visited the US for the first time, when he saw ramps for wheelchairs, and when he saw bathrooms which had wheelchairs, and then when he saw that nameplates were Braille ready, his mind was blown away. He said, wow, this is an Islamic state, not Saudi Arabia, where he lived in those days. We don't take care of the handicapped, we just discard them. And here you guys are trying your best to give a better life to the handicapped. But coming back to the Constitution of Medina, I think one of the things that has ruined the Muslim community is this obsession with the caliphate, this desire to impose Sharia. That is, Islam has been reduced to implementing Sharia and establishing the caliphate. Look, even the companions of the Prophet rejected that model. It was over within 30 years. As soon as Hazrat Ali passed away, that's it, that model died. And Muslims have never, ever been able to revive that unless you want to consider the Ottomans as a caliphate in the same light as the Rashidun. So this whole pursuit of how can you have that kind of a model today is, to me, unbelievable. We are so diverse. If we have a fair and free election, we are not going to elect somebody who's Quraysh. You know, so that's a very racist principle to say that the caliph has to be from the Quraysh tribe alone. That's like saying only Brahmins can be teachers or only Brahmins can be leaders. It's the same thing when we say only Quraysh can be caliphate. So I think Muslims have to get out of that model and work with the latest developments in social sciences. You are saying that why do I have to go to Hudaybiyah to tell people that you have to be pragmatic? Haven't you seen examples of pragmatism on a daily basis in your own life? So many Muslim rulers, etc., have made pragmatic decisions. The Mughals were always pragmatic when they accommodated, I mean, having Rajput generals in their army was pragmatism. So Muslims have been pragmatic all the same. The problem is that Muslims are somehow we are turning off their common sense. And so we have to go in search of one ayah or one verse, only then we can understand. Like as if Muslims are so brain dead that they can't understand pragmatism without giving them an example of Hudaybiyah. No, you are pragmatic all the time when they choose. Like, why do we say the South Asians are pre-med, are born pre-med? Because they are born pragmatic. They are not choosing professions based on their interests. They're choosing professions based on paycheck. And what can be more pragmatic than that? Tell me. You know. So I think that Muslims have to get out of this whole idea of what it means. I think we need a much more contemporary understanding of what it means to be a good Muslim. And I think Mamdani is giving you an example of that by fighting for the most vulnerable. He's fighting for the masakin. And therefore, in my view, he's a Muslim.
Do you so going back to the
yeah, go ahead, Matthew. Go ahead.
So going back to the subject of younger Muslims, I do agree that younger first-generation Muslims, Muslim converts, individuals who have been acculturated within America and Europe for a long period of time can be very helpful. At the same time, like, you know, I look at the Muslim blogosphere or the Muslim podcast sphere, and I do also see a liberal versus conservative divide there. You know, I'll see, and I don't mean to name names, but I'll see, you know, like Daniel Haqiqat Jew or Muhammad Ajab, or I'll see even worse, some of the kind of more extreme people who have perhaps appropriated Islam recently, like Andrew Tate. And I wonder if it's like same as it ever was with regards to the liberal versus conservative divide. Like, you know, what can more open-minded Muslims nowadays do to address that issue? Like, does this seem very similar to, you know, the liberal versus conservative divide that you saw in the past? Or are there aspects of it that seem new to you?
There's a slight difference. The non-Muslim conservatives have a purpose, which is America. In America, the non-Muslim conservatives in England have a purpose, which is Great Britain. The non-Muslim conservatives in Germany have a purpose, which is Germany, besides their conservative values. What purpose do conservative Muslims in America have? It's not about America. I mean, if you listen to Muhammad Hijab, or I don't even know what they're talking about. In a few occasions, they have attacked me, they have talked to me, but I find that they, see, you are a doctor. Let me ask you a simple question. Pick a disease, which is, let's say, cancer right now, right? One of the biggest diseases out there. If you, a religious Muslim, if he or she were to find a cure to cancer, do you think all the non-Muslims in the world will not take it out of Islamophobia, that medicine? Or will they take it? The answer is in the COVID vaccine, one of the couples from Germany was Muslims, right? If you remember, Turkish Muslims in Germany who came up with one of the vaccines for COVID, and they became multi-millionaires and everybody in the world bought. So if Muslims have solutions to global problems, people are not going to avoid those solutions because they are coming from Muslims. So if Muslims have solutions to social injustice, if Muslims have solutions to poverty, if Muslims have solutions to injustice, crime, you think the world is going to simply throw it away and say, we don't take it? I can give you examples of Muslims who came up, like, for example, Muhammad Yunus and Amartya Sen came up with this concept of Human Development Index, and the world adopted it. That is the best measure of development today. Muhammad Yunus came up with this concept of Gramin, whatever you call it, microfinancing, and the world has adopted it. They didn't say, oh, this is a Muslim guy and we should not take it. So if Muslims have the magic potion to solve the problems of injustice and the problems of inequity, the problems of war, the problems of poverty, I think the world will simply embrace them and take their solutions. We are not offering them. We're just not offering them. And that is why we are marginal to the world.
I always remember one of the original metaphors used in the Sierra literature when people would engage in dawah, rather than walking into another location with a jalabiya, like speaking a foreign language, they would look at culture as a vessel, and as Muslims, they would fill that vessel in a way that matched the shape of that culture and was most useful to that culture. And I sometimes worry that we're missing some of the earliest modes of thinking and modes of acting of some of the previous generations. Do you?
So let me give you an example. When I said that the Khulafa Rashidin were making up, you could also interpret that as saying that they were adjusting to their times. They were not following a revealed text in their politics, right? They did what they thought was best at that time. So to me, in my book, I talk about it as their innovative thinking. One of the reasons why he created an electoral college was Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, was because he was worried that his son might become the caliph, because he was very popular. So he wanted it to be legitimized if he became. And eventually he kind of created a system which made it difficult for him. So there were lots of reasons why they did what they did, right? But they were often very pragmatic. And for that reason, Muslims are not working on that. Like, for example, finally, you see this deal between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan of collective security arrangement. Okay, let's assume that all Muslims are stupid and dumb and have no brains and cannot come up with anything new. But they have been seeing NATO exist since 1949. Can't they copy it? We talk about ummah, 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 ummah. What ummah? Where is the ummah? The world is killing Gazans. Where is the ummah? It's absent. Iran was bombarded by so many countries. Nobody protected it. In fact, the only time Arabs fought in the last 2 years was to protect Israel. When Iran attacked Israel in October of 2024 or April of 2024, Jordanian jets flew. In fact, Jordanian king's daughter also flew to protect Israel, but nobody went to protect Iran. So
they're empty shells or imposters, calling themselves the Ummah. What's that Surat al-Munafiqun, like stacks of wood, like just hanging at the side of a wall?
Yeah, so I mean, like, what to do with this? What, we are so proud that, oh, we are 1.75 billion. Yeah, but what am I going to do with them? they're not good for themselves. That's the whole point of it. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. The ideas are all there. What are you waiting for? You want me to discover a hadith which says that have a collective security arrangement? Only then will you be able to understand? There are so many hadiths about being honest. There are so many hadiths about being truthful. What happened to that? We don't follow those. So the problem is that I think Muslims need to become very empirical, very pragmatic, and very policy-oriented thinking. All this identity, obsession, attacking each other. Muslims spend more time attacking other Muslims than going after and doing solutions. That's why I spend a lot of my time now on my channel conversations talking about the global economy, the global order, and recommend policy recommendations. Sometimes I get emails from people from some Muslim countries, but oftentimes it's mostly non-Muslim countries and people in various think tanks, etc., who seem to be benefiting from my work. So it is a very, very, shall we say, depressing to look at the shallowness and thinness of Muslims and their identity, and it is very troubling. So we talk a lot about these things, but hardly anybody acts on it. Yes, there are a few people. Yes, there are some doctors from Chicago who have gone and served in Gaza. Yes. Do you know how many soldiers are there in all the Muslim armies of OIC? 8.9 million, equal to the population of Israel. what are they doing for the last 2 years? They're sitting. And so it makes all these claims about Muslim solidarity and all of that quite, empty, empty shots. And I guarantee you, one of the incredible things that Mamdani has done is mobilize South Asians. A lot of South Asians have registered to vote. And let me tell you, they are not 18. So why didn't they vote in 2024?
Well, we would argue that American Muslims, the way that the Electoral College works, actually have quite a bit of disproportionate political power. We saw what American Muslims were able to do in Michigan. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, they certainly made their voice heard, and they destroyed the vote for Kamala Harris in Michigan.
I mean, if you look at Rashida Tlaib's constituency, she and Trump won it by 75% of the vote, right? So Trump got 75% of the vote from Rashida Tlaib's constituency. So did Rashida Tlaib. That means Muslims went there and Arabs went there and voted for her and for Trump. After Kamala Harris said basically that I have no disagreement with Donald Trump, I simply, I kind of campaigned for her for about 3 weeks on my shows. And then once she said that, that was done for me. And I actually had Jill Stein on the show. We had a long 1-hour show, and the show was seen. A lot of people in Michigan watched that show because it was just a few days before the vote. So yes, Muslims became active. They made a difference in Michigan. But my question is that Mamdani has inspired many Muslims to come out and vote and register to vote in New York. The question is, why when they already registered is the question that I am asking. Because not all of them are becoming 18 now. That's what I'm saying. There are older people too who have not voted. And why? I mean, 2024 was such an important election, right? Given the war that was going on, etc. And it didn't move Muslims to register to vote. I had the same problem here in Delaware. I was very active in 2016. I used to hold congressional debates in the mosque and town hall meetings, etc. But then Muslims didn't register to vote. And then now you can know who has voted and who has not voted. So suddenly politicians in this part of the country don't see Muslims as a force because A, they're not giving as much money to campaigns, and B, they are not voting. I mean, do we have a Miriam Adelson or Bill Ackerman or somebody like Bloomberg? These guys are giving like millions of dollars for their case.
I have seen instances where mobilizing Muslim communities almost functions like that of a union vote, where if local towns or districts were able to support a candidate that was willing to bend the needle even just a little bit on Gaza, we would be able to get hundreds or a few thousand people out to support them. There was a district close to Anaheim, California, in Orange County, where Vietnamese candidate Derek Tran won by maybe about 500 or 600 votes. I forget the exact number. And I would argue that was because of CARE California's aggressive advocacy of Derek Tran to support a more principled position on Palestine. So I think Muslims as a political entity are a little bit underutilized. And I do worry also that if they aren't used in the service of good, that they could be manipulated in the service of bad. Like I saw what happened in Hamtramck. I don't know who convinced the mayor of Hamtramck to support Trump, but that was definitely a bad move.
Well, he got an ambassadorial position, didn't he? Yeah, he got an appointment. He's an ambassador to some place. I don't know where, but the mayor of Hamtramck. And see, you have opportunities in every community, right, who are going to take advantage of it. But you need a lot more heroes, and we don't have as many heroes as we need. There will be villains We have more villains than heroes. What we need more heroes than villains in the community, people who will work. And it's not just for the community, that's the problem. You know, you have to work for your neighbors, you have to work for your community, as in where you live. So if you are from Michigan, then you fight for Michigan. Then you are one of them. And if you don't, you know, I remember about a couple of months after 9/11, I was invited. I will not give you specifics because you might guess who I'm talking about. So anyway, I was invited to speak at a university, and I was an assistant professor who had just started teaching at a small liberal arts school that nobody had heard about. But I got a phone call saying, since you are coming to give a talk today at our university, why don't you give the Jummah khutbah today? It was Friday. So I said, okay, it just means I was going from Michigan to Chicago. I said, okay, I'll just drive 2-3 hours early. I went there, and in the university MSA, I gave my khutbah. And they had advertised it, and a lot of professors came to listen to me. And then in the evening, when they had the panel, they had these famous professors from prestigious Ivy League schools who were introduced. And then this guy, an assistant professor from nowhere, and the audience stood up and gave me a standing ovation before I could even speak. And one of the professors was quite offended. And she told me, like, who are you? I mean, this is how she spoke to me. Who are you? I said, I'm nobody. He said, then why are they clapping? I said, because they know that I'm with them. And she says, what do you mean? They know that you are with them. I said, I was with them in the Friday Jummah prayer.
It's been a major public relations. Go ahead, Ruby.
Well, so what do you think that you know, generally these ideas often are floating among the scholars and thinkers and all that, but to bring the message to the common Muslims, and the clergies, the imams have much more grip on their minds and their thinking thought process. And that thought process is the problem right now, what I think. And how do you think that we can come up with a creative and innovative approach so that we can bring this message to the common people that you are in an extremely important place in the world? You're, you know, as believers, we think that we are brought here, wherever we brought to, we have a responsibility to make a positive change. And that is the main thrust of the Quran, that you establish justice, you work for common good, and all that. So how we inspire that through our religious teachings and all that, and bring a parallel message. And like Dr. Kaskas, I find him very enlightened, and that kind of voices, your voices, how we bring them to the grassroots level, the innovative way.
So, like Dr. Safi Kaskas is quite extraordinary, and especially, you know, he's so active, and his translation is very, very interesting. He's been on my show on more than one occasion. Especially, I occasionally do a conversation on the Quran. So I have done with some of the prominent living translators and commentators of the Quran on my show. And so, yeah, Dr. Safi Kaskas came on the show and he talked about it. And he's a typical liberal approach to Islam. He's like an American liberal in his understanding of the Quran and his advocacy also. But he's very well grounded in the Quran. So that's an interesting. So you could say he's an advocate of Quranic liberalism. So, but you can also extract, look, the Taliban claim that they are imposing Sharia. I find it repulsive. Would you go and live in in Afghanistan under the Sharia, that the Taliban? Obviously not. I would consider it a tragedy if anyone, look at the women there. What a sad plight. They can't go to school after 6th grade. No windows in houses anymore. Can you imagine they have banned windows? And on top of that, now the latest thing is to ban they banned 650 books which have been written by female authors so that women are not inspired to write. And they call it Sharia, and nobody comes out and says they are not Muslims. Why is the rest of the Muslim world seeing what the Taliban are doing and not condemning them as un-Islamic? Tell me.
Are there any models of governance across Muslim majority countries nowadays where you're optimistic, where you feel like there's hope?
Well, there are in small spaces, right? Like I wouldn't give 100 on 100 to anybody. Like I would give 0 on 100 to the Taliban. The only thing that the Taliban have done well in Afghanistan is bring stability. And the reason why they were able to bring stability is because, one, they were the problem. And the other problem was the US, and the US is gone. It's not a Taliban achievement. It is the US withdrawal which has brought stability to Afghanistan in that sense. But nothing else that they have done, to me, is Islamic or worthy of emulation.
They were the slightly least worst.
Yeah, they are so. But if you look at certain countries, like for example, in Iran, women have been more empowered under the Islamic Republic, believe it or not, than the previous regime of the Shah. So when Ayatollah Khomeini said women cannot leave home without covering themselves, women were stunned. They said, oh, we can leave home? They didn't know that they could go to the bazaar themselves. All I have to do is just cover my hair and then I'm ready to roll. So it was empowering in the early days, but then it became stagnant and then didn't move. That's the problem, right? They should have been progressive rather than just one change. If you look at Turkey, there's lots of wonderful things that they did in promoting knowledge. There are wonderful universities which popped up in Turkey, and then they were also destroyed by Erdogan himself, shut down 2 very important Muslim universities like Al-Fateh, which was connected with the Gulen, and Shahir University, which was connected with Ahmed Davutoglu. And so there's only one interesting place now, Ibn Khaldun, but there are very good universities. The Marmara University is a great place, etc. So Turkey, I think, has done some things right, but I would give it like maybe 10, 15% okay. There are lots of other problems there in Turkey, but I don't see anything great coming out of the Gulf. There's nothing that I find interesting in the Arab world that I would see as reflection of good governance. And notice that the only places where you see something positive to look up to, like Indonesia and Malaysia, these are probably the 2 best Muslim countries today. They are democratic. They are not full democracies, but neither is the US, according to the Economic Intelligence Unit. The US is not a full democracy, neither is India. And Malaysia falls in that category. Indonesia is a great place. And what is interesting about these societies are that they are vibrant. So they are economically vibrant as well as intellectually vibrant, and they are democratic. So yes, we can look at it. I had lots of hopes from Bangladesh. About 25 years ago, I had written a short article, Sister Ruby, saying that Bangladesh busted many myths. At that time, they were having an election, and no matter who won the election, a woman would have been Prime Minister of Bangladesh. So both sides were women. So it busted the myth, A, that Muslims can't have a democracy, number 1. Number 2, that Muslims marginalize women. Bangladesh has had 2 women who have ruled Bangladesh. America has yet to have even one woman president. But not only that, they also busted the myth that in order to be democratic, you have to be economically rich and developed. So it was a poor country coming from a very traditional background, was developing and progressive. And now I don't know what to make of Bangladesh, you know. I still have hope, but but it had progressed well, especially if you contrast it to Pakistan, which has just got worse and worse and worse since 1971. And Bangladesh was doing reasonably well until Sheikh Hasina decided that she wanted to be like Modi or like Trump. She wanted to be an authoritarian, and then she ruined her own country. And she did okay on the economy a little bit, but we'll see what happens. So I think that Muslim societies, countries today, which have some modicum of elections, even Turkey, even though it has taken an authoritarian turn, but still has elections. So you can clearly see that the only countries which are doing well, which don't have huge natural resources, are those which have some form of democratic institutions: Indonesia, Malaysia, Turkey.
Ruby, I know that you have high hopes for development and rehabilitation of Bangladesh in the coming years. I also, one of the things that gave me hope were social movements in Muslim majority countries. I mean, I myself was a was a student of the April 6th movement and some of the revolutionaries in Egypt. A student of some of the bridge building, Islamo-democratic governance seen in Tunisia. I feel like social movements can do a lot in terms of creating more open societies in Muslim majority countries. Ruby, what do you think about recent social protests in Bangladesh? Do you think that's going to do a lot to open the country up more, to create a more vibrant public square and cultural environment? Ruby, you there?
Yeah,
So,
I am here.
Her problem is that she is
I'm
there.
just thinking that I am in a difficult situation. But the thing is that there are so many geopolitically, Bangladesh is in a critical place, and India surrounding, and India has actually turned Bangladesh into practically a vassal state for the last 54 years. It's very difficult to now, bring about a respectable relationship between two countries on the basis of interest. It is very difficult to that is a complicated situation right now. And no global power is coming to aid a country like Bangladesh. And the people are overwhelmingly supporting a democratic system. People are really, this time, I mean, in the last 2-3 years, what I have seen, but their collective will have been crushed for such a long time that the people who are in power and are coming to power would not really give much credence about that. That is what my feeling. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think that things can change. Like July movement, I was surprised that from all of a sudden, are we here?
We're here.
All of a sudden, I mean, the whole nation responded. I mean, can you think about 52 places simultaneously uprising, and such a organic, concerted effort, because a response to the long injustice and bad governance and all that things. The common people are conversant with that. They are aware of that. They know the corruption. They know the mismanagement. And it is from top to bottom and top up. So how do you overcome that in a shorter period of time? Common people are wanting a change, a big change, but who is going to bring about that change? That is the critical thing. Who is going to be so dedicated and courageous, and we need very courageous people. And what I see is people are afraid. Even among the leaders who think that things needs to be changed, and we need to work for a paradigm shift. They're scared because of a lot of things. So I don't know, maybe Dr. Khan can shed some light on that. But I think that is the situation in many African countries and Asian countries, that we are caught up in a vicious geopolitics. We are caught up in rising corruption. I mean, exponential corruption. It's unbelievable kind of corruption that is unthinkable even some few years back. Now the demand is increasing. And the most dangerous thing is it is accepted. It is, so when people accept, that is the most dangerous sign of that. So, whenever people react to that, fight against that, it changes. And
so I want to make just 2 points on this Bangladesh issue, which is very important, because I actually wrote a few articles after the Bangladesh and spoke with some people from Bangladesh on my show. I've had several Bangladeshis come on the show. One is, the problem is that the Bangladesh needs change and reforms, political reforms and economic reforms that it has to make. Muhammad Yunus wants to make those changes before elections, which means that a non-elected entity is going to bring about reforms. So the question of legitimacy of those reforms will forever remain. And then he's afraid to go into elections without making reforms. And then, because what you need to do is you need an interim parliament, you need an interim prime minister. So you elect an interim government with the sole purpose of doing the reforms. So that is where they're stuck. Now the army wants an election sooner than later. So we'll see whether there will be elections in February or not. I don't think that Bangladesh is ready for an election right away, because the political reforms have not taken place. And you know what is also interesting is that there is going to be a lot of disillusionment. In the recent elections in university levels, the Jamaat Islami did very well, which has scared some people. So it is quite possible that there are outside powers who are talking to the Bangladeshi military and saying that you can't have an election where Jamaat Islami comes in a tremendous with lots of seats. This has also scared the BNP. And I don't know what is going to happen. Is Awami League going to pull a stunt like the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, which means a large number of Awami League people who are in the country at the moment, those who didn't run away, will they run as independents and then coalesce together in the parliament? So it's going to be a pretty messy thing. But there's one thing I want to point out. There's a lot of chatter, especially in India, that this is a regime change that was triggered from outside. In the last 3 years, from 2022 till 2025, there have been 4 out of 8, 50% of South Asian governments were overturned. Imran Khan in 2022, Sri Lanka in 2022, Bangladesh in 2024, and Nepal in 2025. I did a whole show on this for those of your viewers. Please go and see. And I said why 4 countries have lost their government and why India has not lost. And I showed only 3 indicators: unemployment, inflation, and growth rates. All the 4 countries had very high inflation, very high unemployment, and very low growth rates. So at least Bangladesh had a 5% growth rate when Sheikh Hasina was overthrown, but unemployment was pretty high. I think it was around 11%, and inflation was around 5%. So the total, in the US, we call it the misery index, where you add inflation and unemployment. If you looked at Sri Lanka, one of the 2 categories, inflation was 49%. And in Pakistan, inflation was 19%. So high inflation, high unemployment, and low growth. In India, the inflation is not that high. There is high growth, and that's why India is surviving, even though India does have high unemployment and it does have, its inflation is under control, and it has high growth. That's why it's stable. So this is not just about ideology and values. There's also an economic side to it that people are not looking at it. And if you look at all the narratives, nepotism, the same in Nepal, they were talking about Nepo babies. In Bangladesh, they were talking about nepotism by the Awami League. In Sri Lanka, they were talking about nepotism. In Pakistan, also the same thing. So there are identical scenarios in South Asian conditions. So they should have seen it coming. And I mean, I should have seen it coming, but I was not paying that close attention to economic factors, since I'm a political theorist, so looking at more of the ideological side of it. But now I'm paying more attention to the economic side. In Bangladesh, with 3% growth rate this year, people are going to be unhappy unless they are able to generate jobs while also providing political reforms.
But Dr. Khan, don't you think the reason, the root reason for all these symptoms that and the things you talked about is actually the from the beginning, in a primordial period, when the Bakshal was announced and made one-party system from multi-party, the absence of multi-party and Sheikh Mujib's creation of one-party system and an authoritarian system at a primordial period of a nation actually destroyed its future.
So,
And also the India's policy to reach out to the governments who are working with the agent governments. I don't know what else to say, or puppet governments. And instead of reaching out to the people, if India would have reached out to the people and made friends with the people and what people wanted, then America, it would have been a win-win situation. It would have been a win. And what you are talking about, this unemployment, it is because of the concentration of wealth and mismanagement that is all around this lack of checks and balances and a multi-party system and a good governing system that is absent in Bangladesh for a long time.
So just as it's not America's job to solve Muslim countries' problems, it is not India's problem or India's job to take care of the Bangladeshi people. India is going to do what is in India's interest and what is the least expensive way. So it is the old colonial method. Take me to your leader and I will bribe your leader. And if your leader doesn't take the bribe, I will shoot that person and install somebody else who will take my bribe and do what I need. This is the same model that India is using and others. But this argument that a single party state is not going to do well is wrong. The fastest growing economy in the last 30, 35 years has been a single party state, which is China. So you can see the model of authoritarian China as at least economic development has been stupendous. So I think that there are some lessons we can learn from political economy of other countries, from the political developmental histories of other countries. But ultimately, you have to find your own path too. And Bangladesh was doing reasonably well. Yes, it had very small issues like exporting garments. And it has another chance now with India at 50% and Bangladesh at 20%. It can take back all the export market that it was beginning to lose to India since August 2024. So yes, you can get your economy back on track, but are your leaders interested in that? So I don't know why people elect leaders who then don't act in the interest of the public. I mean, we have done it. We have elected Donald Trump, who has screwed the MAGA crowd on many levels, in terms of Medicare, is undermining them. He's undermining American universities. He's undermining several American institutions. But that is the problem of voting on ideological lines. If you vote on ideological lines, you will pay a heavy price, because then you can't say, why aren't you fixing my potholes? And you say, well, I didn't come here to fix potholes. I became president to go after communists, and I'm going after communists. So that's the thing, right? So if you elect people for ideological purposes, then they will pursue ideological goals. But if you select people to perform welfare for you, then that's a different kind of thing. And that is where, at least in the Muslim countries, they don't turn to any model, like other than the Khulafai Rashidin model, where it's let's implement the Sharia and then only Jamaat Islami becomes a force. What other models there are? There are other models of successful Muslim governments. The Ottoman Empire was incredibly successful. The Mughals were incredibly successful. And there are the Persian, there were 3 or 4 Persian empires which were phenomenally successful. Good governance examples are there, success, wealth. India's share of the global GDP at the time of Aurangzeb was 27%. Today, India
I think Ghana is a good model. I mean,
Ghana is just a liberal democratic model. It's just adopting liberal democracy. It's following the model of Northern European countries. They're not pushing any serious religious or cultural agenda.
But better the employment and economic growth that as you are saying, and better distribution of wealth. Don't you think that requires a good economic system that is based on good political system? Do you think without a political system, an economic system can be healthy and can be functioning?
Donald Trump is a reaction to unequal distribution of wealth in the United States. So half of America's per capita income is about $150,000. And the other half is around $19,000. So there's a huge difference between the top half and the bottom half of America. But America is, in spite of everything that you're seeing in the US, it's a very stable country and very sound. And I'm not very troubled even of the $37 trillion debt. It's not a big deal about it. My personal debt to income ratio is worse than America's. If you look at my house and
don't even talk about mine.
Yes, exactly. So I'm sure your debt is at least 3 times your income. So the US is just 1.2 to its income. But I think there are lots. The problem is not. One problem is that we don't have serious discussions which are policy related in the Muslim world. There aren't policy discussions, they're all political discussions. Even in India, which claims to be Vishwaguru and all of that, all the discussions are rubbish. It's about, oh, the Bangladeshis are coming here and they're looting us. Oh, if Congress comes to power, it will steal your Mangal Sutras and give it to Muslims. We will break this mosque and build a temple. I mean, what kind of, it tells you that your voting public is totally ignorant, incapable of understanding that we have a serious unemployment issue. We have certain challenges coming in as a result of Trump's tariffs. So that is a challenge, right? That where you have to have a society which is sufficiently educated to engage in a serious policy discussion and vote on the basis of policy rather than emotion and identity. So it goes back to the same question: have we invested in education enough? And is the education a quality education, which not only prepares people to get jobs, but also prepares them to be good citizens? We have a problem of ethics because Muslims don't know what it means to be a good person. We know only one. Oh, he prays 5 times a day. He has a beard. His pajama is short. He's a good person. Really? No. He might be a liar. He might be unethical. He might not be fulfilling his obligation. There are so many ethical principles in the Quran and resources. You know, a Muslim can't lie. A Muslim can't break promises. A Muslim should always fulfill his promises. Muslim should not be extravagant. There are lots of other principles that we ignore, and we define what it means to be a good person through identity, advocacy, and rituals. But what we need is people who are ethical, who do their jobs steadily, etc. I remember having a conversation with a very prominent American professor who I'm a very big fan. I learned from him. He was an incredible guy. So he met me in the bathroom at the university, and he looked at me and he said, "So what do you think of the West?" And I thought of him. First, it was very awkward. We are both in the bathroom, and he's talking to me. And he's a professor. I had just come from India, where we respect our teachers far more than here. So I remember telling him this. I said, I'm amazed that you are a nobody in America. And he said, what? He got the shock of his life. I said, I've not met anybody who's so deep, such a deep thinker like you, so highly educated, so ethical, so meticulous, doesn't cut any corners in his scholarship, works hard, does his job, and gives 110% every time. And I said, the fact that you are a nobody in America is the reason why America is such a great place, because I think there are a couple of million people like you in this country. And that is why they are carrying this country, not the rest of them. So I think there are 5 to 10 million people in America who are incredible. They have tremendous work ethic. They are brilliant. They're very hardworking, very meticulous. They do their job and try to excel at it. And they have, that's why America has so many social justice issues that have been successful in the past. We ignore the wonderful things about America because we just focus on the negatives. I doubt if even a single American Muslim will choose to go to any other Muslim country on earth today over America. And all the other Muslims in all the other Muslim countries, if given a chance, I think half of them will come to America if they could. So there is a reason why they have built a country that is an envy of everybody else, because there are at least a number of people who are very, very ethical. I see in my colleagues, one of the most interesting thing was one of my professors whose student I was going up for tenure, and the book he had sent, he had to get his book contract at least before he went up for tenure, and the publisher was delaying it. So I told him, send it to somebody else. And he said that would be unethical. He was risking his tenure to stick by the principle. So that is an important part. Immanuel Kant said that you have to be, the law-abidingness is an important part of being part of a republic, law-abidingness. And the example that I give you is that in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock, you come to a red signal, nobody is watching, there's no photographs, no cameras, no cops, but people stop and obey the law. So that is civilization, right? And I think that is something that we need to inculcate in our societies, that we need to become people who try to give a little more, take a little less.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your input and sharing with us. It has been 1 hour and about 20 minutes. So what, do you have any question, Matthew?
Well, Dr. Khan, we appreciate your time. We're all in multiple different time zones, and your time zone is closer to the witching hour than mine. I have a screaming baby outside. I have to get back to him. So, but
and I would like to have you again,
sure.
and continue on this discussion. It's a very important discussion, and thank you very much for your shedding the lights on these things.
Thank you very
on
much.
these issues.